Imagine walking into a saloon brawl carrying what looks like an innocent piece of brass jewelry until you reveal it's actually a revolver with no barrel that fires point blank, brass knuckles that can shatter jaws, and a folding knife blade, all in one compact weapon that French street gangs used to terrorize Paris before it made its way to American frontier towns. History tells us the Wild West was one with simple guns. That's a lie. Inventors were building weapons of mass destruction. While some men carried six-shooters, others wielded firearms that defied physics. Multi-barrel monsters, sword gun hybrids, pistols that never needed reloading. Today, we reveal the top 10 most legendary and deadliest Wild West weapons that could have changed American history. From presidential test fires to banned military weapons, these forgotten firearms pack more innovation than most modern guns. Let's kick things off with a weapon that basically said, why choose between a pistol and a shotgun when you can have both? The Lamat Revolver. Man, the Lamat is like the Swiss Army knife of, I don't want to die today. Picture this, you're a Confederate cavalry officer in 1858, and Dr. Jean Lamat just handed you what's basically a portable artillery piece. This thing had 9 .42 caliber chambers arranged around a central 20-gauge shotgun barrel, 9 regular shots, plus 1 to lead everything in that general direction blast. The way it worked was pure genius. You had a pivoting firing pin that could switch between the regular chambers and that chunky shotgun barrel underneath. So you could pick off enemies with precision, then when things got really hairy, flip that pin and unleash buckshot hell. Confederate officers loved these things because it was like carrying 2 guns in one holster. Some of these beauties were even made in Paris and smuggled through the Union blockade. But here's where physics crashed the party. This beast weighed over 3 pounds. In a world where your draw speed meant the difference between going home or going to the cemetery, lugging around what felt like a boat anchor wasn't exactly ideal. Plus, all those moving parts, they loved jamming up with dirt and gunpowder at the worst possible moments. The complex mechanism also made repairs nearly impossible in the field. The price tag was absolutely insane too, around $40 when a good horse cost $150. Only wealthy plantation owners and high-ranking officers could afford them. When the Confederacy fell, most Lamats disappeared into private collections. Today, surviving examples sell for 6 figures at auction. It's wild to think this monster could have changed cavalry warfare if it had been lighter and cheaper. Now, while Americans were building these monsters, the French were over there like, hold my wine, and created something even weirder. The Apache Revolver. Okay, so despite the name, this thing had absolutely nothing to do with Native Americans. This was pure French street gang innovation from the 1860s. The Les Apaches gang in Paris needed something that looked innocent, but could ruin your whole day in 3 different ways. These guys were basically the French version of New York's Dead Rabbits gang, and they needed weapons that could slip past police patrols. Check this out. It was a revolver with no barrel, brass knuckles for a grip, and a folding knife blade. It was literally 3 weapons pretending to be jewelry. The gun part fired .32 caliber rounds point blank into whatever you pressed it against. The brass knuckles could shatter jaws. And that little folding blade, perfect for those intimate conversations. Belgian gun makers crafted these things with the precision of fine watches. When these started showing up in American frontier towns, lawmen were completely baffled. They'd see this weird brass trinket and think, hey, probably some European fashion nonsense, right up until someone got shot, stabbed, and punched simultaneously. Gamblers especially loved them because they could palm one during a card game and nobody would notice until it was way too late. The downside? Well, with no barrel, your accuracy was basically hope they're standing really, really close. And .32 caliber rounds weren't exactly known for their stopping power. You had to be close enough to smell what they had for breakfast. The knife blade was also tiny, more for intimidation than actual damage. Still, the psychological effect was massive. But if the French liked their weapons sneaky, the U.S. Navy went full, why not just attach a sword to this pistol? The Elgen Cutless pistol. This is what happens when naval engineers have too much coffee and not enough supervision. Back in 1838, the Navy was dealing with ship-to-ship combat, where you'd fire your pistol once, then what? Stand there awkwardly while pirates charged at you with cutlasses? The problem was real. Naval combat often devolved into brutal hand-to-hand fighting on cramped ship decks. George Elgin's solution was beautifully simple. Weld an 11-inch curved blade under a .54 caliber pistol barrel. Fire once, then immediately become a swordsman. It was like the ultimate Plan B weapon. Naval officers carried these during boarding actions, then brought them inland where saloon fights and frontier skirmishes demanded the same brutal versatility. The blade was actually well balanced and sharp enough to be effective in close combat. The U.S. Navy ordered 150 of these in 1838, mainly for exploring expeditions and naval patrols in hostile waters. They saw action during the Mexican-American War and various Indian conflicts. Officers loved having a backup weapon that didn't require reloading, just grab and slash. The psychological effect was huge too. Imagine facing someone who could shoot you, then immediately charge with a sword. The reality, though? Try swinging a sword with a pistol attached to it, or aiming a pistol with a sword throwing off your balance. It was like trying to write poetry while juggling. Theoretically possible, but you're probably going to mess up both. The weight distribution was all wrong for either function, plus the blade could catch on rigging or clothing at exactly the wrong moment. Now here's where things get really interesting. One inventor looked at music and thought, what if guns worked like harmonicas? The Browning harmonica gun, Jonathan Browning, and yes, that's John Browning's dad, was sitting in his Illinois workshop in 1834 watching his neighbors struggle with single-shot weapons. The math was simple. One shot, multiple bad guys equals you having a very bad day. Indian raids, outlaw gangs, wild animals. Frontier life threw multiple threats at you faster than you could reload a muzzle loader. His solution was pure lateral thinking genius. Instead of rotating chambers like a revolver, why not slide them horizontally? He created this sliding magazine system that looked exactly like a harmonica, except instead of music, it played in gunshots. You could load anywhere from 5 to 25 shots, fire one, slide the bar, fire again. No complex springs, no delicate mechanisms, just reliable, repeating fire. The design was so simple that frontier gunsmiths could repair it with basic tools. Mormon pioneers absolutely loved these things during their trek west. When faced with hostile encounters, one person with a harmonica gun could lay down sustained fire while others reloaded. The psychological effect was huge. Enemies couldn't count your shots and plan their rush accordingly. Some models had interchangeable magazine bars, so you could preload multiple bars for extended firefights. The catch? That sliding mechanism was completely exposed to every grain of dirt, drop of rain, and enemy bullet on the frontier. And when you finally emptied it, you had to completely remove the magazine to reload, leaving you standing there like an idiot while outlaws closed in. But here's the kicker. Jonathan's son John would take these lessons and build the firearms empire that included Winchester rifles and basically every machine gun that won World War I. Speaking of multiple shots, European gunsmiths looked at single barrels and said, "That's cute, but what if we had 6? The pepper box revolver. The pepper box was Europe's answer to more is better, taken to its logical extreme. Instead of one barrel with multiple chambers, these madmen just said, let's have multiple barrels and multiple chambers. British and Belgian gunmakers in the 1830s created these rotating clusters of death that could fire anywhere from 4 to 6 barrels. The idea was simple. If one barrel is good, 6 barrels must be 6 times better, right? The scary part? You could fire all barrels simultaneously for maximum. Everything in that direction needs to stop existing power, or fire them sequentially for sustained firepower. Stagecoach guards loved these things because when bandits surrounded your coach, you didn't aim. You just pointed the general mass of barrels and let physics sort it out. The simultaneous fire mode could literally clear a room or stop a charging horse. European manufacturers went crazy with variations. Some had barrels that could be removed and replaced. Others featured elaborate engravings and gold inlays for wealthy customers. The British East India Company issued them to officers in hostile territories. American importers brought thousands to the frontier, where they became popular with anyone who faced multiple attackers regularly. But physics is unforgiving. More barrels meant more weight, more moving parts, and more ways for everything to go wrong. The black powder residue would gum up the rotating mechanism, and firing all barrels at once could literally split the frame. Plus, aiming was more like suggesting a general direction to the bullets. The recoil from simultaneous firing could break wrists or dislocate shoulders. Manufacturing costs were also insane. Each barrel had to be individually crafted and aligned. When Colt perfected the single-barrel revolver, pepper boxes quickly became obsolete museum pieces. Now, while everyone was obsessing over multiple shots, some inventors were chasing a different dream: the repeating pistol. The Volcanic repeating pistol. This is the weapon that was about 50 years ahead of its time and absolutely refused to wait. In 1855, the Volcanic Repeating Arms Company thought they'd cracked the code. A lever-action pistol that used rocket-ball ammunition where the bullet contained its own propellant. The concept was revolutionary. Eliminate external cartridges entirely and create a self-contained ammunition system. Think about it. 30 rounds in a tubular magazine, lever-action operation, no external cartridges needed. You could fire continuously without stopping to reload. It was basically the assault pistol of 1855, which sounds awesome until you realize why nobody remembers it. The lever mechanism was smooth and fast, and the tubular magazine meant you could carry incredible firepower in a compact package. Investors poured money into the company, convinced they were backing the future of firearms. The design was legitimately innovative. It influenced lever-action rifles for decades afterward. Some models were beautifully crafted with engraved brass frames and fancy wood grips. They looked like the weapons of tomorrow. The rocket ball ammunition was so pathetically weak that stories spread of men being shot multiple times who kept fighting because they literally didn't know they'd been hit. The bullets couldn't penetrate heavy clothing, let alone leather or wood. Beautiful, innovative, and about as effective as throwing the bullets by hand. The propellant charge was so small that the bullets barely had enough energy to cycle the action reliably. The company went bankrupt spectacularly, leaving investors holding expensive paperweights. But from its ashes rose Winchester Repeating Arms and Smith & Wesson. The assets, patents, and lessons learned created the weapons that actually conquered the West. Sometimes the best innovations come from learning what doesn't work. But while Americans were experimenting with weak bullets, the British Navy decided subtlety was overrated. The Knock Volley Gun? Henry Knock looked at naval combat in 1779 and had a simple thought. What if instead of one musket ball, we fired 7 simultaneously? This was British engineering at its most gloriously excessive, 7.52 caliber barrels arranged around a central tube, all firing with one trigger pull. The Royal Navy was facing desperate boarding actions where pirates and enemy sailors swarmed ship decks in human waves. Here's how this monster worked. Pull the trigger, the central barrel fires, and the flash ignites the 6 surrounding barrels instantly. You weren't shooting at one person, you were clearing an entire section of ship deck. The spread pattern was devastating at close range, and the psychological effect was enormous. Enemy boarding parties would scatter just seeing one of these pointed in their direction. The Royal Navy issued them to ship captains and Marine officers for deck defense. When these made it to American frontier forts, they became the ultimate get-off-my-lawn weapon. Fort commanders loved having something that could stop mass attacks with one shot. The weapon was also used during the Indian Wars, where it proved effective against mounted charges. Manufacturing was incredibly expensive. Each gun required precision boring of 7 separate barrels and perfect alignment of the flash channels. Only skilled craftsmen could build them, and quality control was a nightmare. The British government spent a fortune on these things before reality set in. The problem? Newton's laws don't care about your tactical needs. 7 simultaneous explosions created recoil that could dislocate shoulders and break collarbones. The massive flash and smoke cloud left you blind and defenseless after firing. The Royal Navy quickly decided this was too dangerous. to the people firing it. Sailors literally refused to use them after several injuries. Now, as the Civil War was tearing America apart, one weapon was about to change everything: the Spencer repeating rifle. Christopher Spencer watched Americans dying with single-shot weapons and thought, there has to be a better way. His lever-action rifle fed from a 7-round magazine hidden in the buttstock and used reliable breast cartridges. You could maintain suppressing fire while your enemies frantically reloaded their muskets. The timing was perfect. America needed every technological advantage it could get. The Union Army adopted it first, and suddenly cavalry units could hold positions against overwhelming Confederate numbers. The psychological impact was huge. Confederate soldiers reported facing enemies who never seemed to run out of ammunition. Union cavalry units became mobile firepower platforms, able to hit hard and retreat before return fire could be organized. The gun was so impressive that Abraham Lincoln personally test-fired one on the White House lawn in 1863, putting 7 shots into a target at 40 yards in less than 20 seconds. He immediately ordered the War Department to purchase as many as possible. Lincoln reportedly said it was the finest gun in the world. The rifle helped Union forces maintain technological superiority throughout the war. Production ramped up quickly, with Spencer's factory in Boston working around the clock. The rifle was expensive but effective. Each one cost about $40 when a soldier's monthly pay was $13. The 56-56 Spencer cartridge was powerful enough to drop a horse at 200 yards and accurate enough for precision shooting. The downside was typical for cutting-edge tech: expensive to make, complex to manufacture during the wartime, and that magazine location meant awkward reloading under fire. But Spencer rifles didn't just help win the war, they conquered the frontier afterward. But as the smoke cleared, civilian life demanded something completely different: protection that nobody could see coming. The Remington Elliot ring-trigger Derringer. William Elliot understood something fundamental about danger. It doesn't always announce itself. Gamblers, merchants, and women traveling alone needed protection that looked like nothing until it started shooting. His answer was brilliant in its simplicity. Make a gun so small it could hide in plain sight, yet deadly enough to end threats immediately. 5 .22 caliber barrels arranged in a tight cluster with a ring trigger instead of a traditional guard. The entire weapon weighed less than a deck of cards, but could fire all 5 shots as fast as you could pull. People hid them in coat pockets, purses, even palmed them during poker games. The ring trigger meant you could fire it one-handed while maintaining a poker face. Production began in 1863, right when civilian protection was most needed. The Civil War had flooded the country with desperate men carrying weapons, and normal law enforcement couldn't keep up. Women especially embraced the Elliot Derringer. Finally, a weapon they could conceal in a purse or boot that didn't require masculine strength to operate effectively. The manufacturing was ingenious. Each barrel cluster was precisely drilled, and the ring trigger mechanism was simple but reliable. Remington's quality control meant these little guns rarely misfired when you needed them most. The .22 caliber was perfect for concealment while still being lethal at close range. The trade-off for concealment was stopping power. .22 caliber wasn't exactly known for dropping determined attackers. Plus, that ring trigger had no safety, so a hard knock could set off all 5 barrels. But for situations where being armed was better than being dead, nothing beat it. And finally, let's talk about the weapon that perfectly captured the Wild West spirit of, if it ain't broke, make it more complicated. The Colt revolving rifle. Sam Colt looked at his successful revolvers and thought, what if we made this bigger? The revolving rifle took the proven revolver mechanism and scaled it up to rifle size. Multiple chambers, reliable firing, and the Colt name behind it. On paper, it seemed like the perfect combination of Colt's reliability with rifle accuracy and power. The concept made sense. Rifles were more accurate than pistols, but single-shot rifles left you defenseless during reloading. A revolving rifle would give you 5 or 6 quick shots with rifle accuracy. The U.S. military was interested enough to order several hundred for field testing during the 1850s. Production models featured beautiful case-hardened frames and walnut stocks with the same quality Colt put into their famous pistols. The .44 caliber chambers packed serious stopping power, and the rifled barrel made them accurate out to 200 yards. Some cavalry units adopted them for mounted combat, where rapid follow-up shots were crucial. But here's where engineering met reality in the most painful way possible. Rifles require you to support the barrel with your forward hand, but revolver cylinders have gaps where hot gas and burning powder escape during firing. Put your hand near those gaps, and you're about to have a very bad day involving burns, cuts, and possibly missing fingers. The Army bought some, cavalrymen tried them, and reports came back that were basically, "This works great until it doesn't, and when it doesn't, we lose body parts." Several soldiers suffered serious burns and lacerations to their support hands. One report described a trooper who lost 2 fingers to cylinder blast. And there you have it, the most legendary and deadliest weapons that could have completely rewritten Wild West history. From the genius of the Lamat revolver to the chaotic firepower of the knock volley gun, these inventions were as innovative as they were terrifying. But which one do you think was the most game-changing? Let us know in the comments below, and if you found these forgotten weapons as mind-blowing as we did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss out on the next deep dive into history's darkest corners.